Ethan Miller's life was anything but glamorous, but it was steady, and for a single father raising a 10-year-old daughter, steady was a blessing. His mornings began with Emma's sleepy voice tugging him out of bed, followed by the chaos of packing lunches, checking homework, and making sure she wore matching socks before school. After dropping her off, he headed to his carpentry shop, where he spent long hours building cabinets and repairing furniture. The sawdust, the smell of pine, and the satisfaction of smoothing rough edges had become his therapy, a rhythm that kept him grounded after his wife had walked out years ago. He never complained. Every callus on his hands, every bead of sweat, every dollar earned was for Emma. Love, romance, and grand gestures. Those were luxuries he had long ago buried beneath the weight of responsibility. That's why when his new neighbor, Clara Hayes, knocked on his door one Thursday evening, he could never have anticipated the request she was about to make. Clara was the kind of woman who carried a quiet grace with her. She had only moved into the apartment complex a few months ago, and though she and Ethan had exchanged polite hellos in the hallway, their interactions had never gone beyond small talk. Tonight, however, there was something different about her. She stood nervously at his door, clutching a piece of paper between her fingers, her eyes darting down the hallway as if she wasn't sure she should even be there. "Hi, Ethan," she said softly, her voice unsteady. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I need a favor." Ethan tilted his head, curious. "Of course. What's going on?" She hesitated, chewing on her lower lip before blurting it out in a single breath. "Would you be my date to my ex's wedding?" For a moment, Ethan thought he misheard her. "Wait, your ex's wedding?" Clara winced. "I know it sounds ridiculous, maybe even childish, but I can't face it alone. Andrew and I were together for years, and everyone we know will be there. I can already imagine the whispers, the stares, the pity. I can't let him see me broken. I need someone to stand beside me. Someone kind. Someone strong. Someone who won't let me feel like I'm still the girl he left behind." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, caught off guard. Weddings weren't exactly his scene, and pretending to be someone's date sounded like something out of a romantic comedy, not real life. His first instinct was to politely decline. But then he saw the pleading in Clara's eyes, the raw vulnerability she was trying so hard to mask. He recognized it because he had lived it, the ache of abandonment, the sting of rejection, the desperate need to show the world you weren't as fragile as you felt inside. Against all logic, he found himself nodding. "All right," he said finally, his voice low but steady. "I'll go with you." Relief washed over Clara's face, softening her features. "Thank you, Ethan. You don't know how much this means." She smiled faintly, and for a second, Ethan noticed how the light caught her eyes, making them shimmer with something unspoken. As she walked back toward her apartment, Ethan closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling deeply. He had no idea what he had just agreed to, but something told him that this wasn't just going to be an ordinary wedding. The day of the wedding arrived faster than Ethan expected, and as he stood in front of the mirror adjusting the only suit he owned, he couldn't help but wonder how he had let himself get talked into this. Emma had teased him that morning, insisting he looked like a movie star, before giving him a big hug and wishing him luck. He needed that confidence boost, because deep down, he felt completely out of place. Still, when Clara stepped out of her apartment in a deep emerald dress that hugged her frame with elegance, Ethan's breath caught, and suddenly, the whole evening felt less like a chore and more like an unexpected adventure. She smiled nervously, looping her hand into his arm, and whispered, "We're in this together, okay?" He nodded, offering a reassuring smile, though he had no idea what the night would bring. The wedding venue was nothing short of extravagant, an ivy-covered estate glowing with golden lights, its grand hall filled with chandeliers, towering floral arrangements, and rows of elegantly dressed guests who turned their heads the moment Clara and Ethan walked in. Whispers rippled through the crowd, a mixture of curiosity and shock, for everyone knew Clara had been left behind by Andrew, and now here she was, arriving with a man who radiated quiet strength at her side. Ethan kept his posture steady, holding Clara's hand a little tighter each time he felt her stiffen under the weight of those stares. When his eyes met Andrew's across the room, he caught the flicker of surprise before it morphed into something smug and condescending, as though Andrew had already dismissed him as unworthy. Ethan ignored it, focusing instead on Clara, who seemed to draw courage from his steady presence. During the ceremony, he leaned down once to whisper, "You're doing great," and the way her lips curved into the faintest smile made the entire moment worth it. At the reception, however, things grew more tense. Andrew's new bride cast Clara icy glares from across the room, while a group of Andrew's friends circled like vultures, their comments dripping with condescension. Ethan handled it all with grace, cracking jokes, pulling Clara into dances when he saw her falter, and shielding her from the sharp edges of gossip. At one point, when Clara excused herself, Andrew seized the chance to corner Ethan near the bar. "So, you're the new guy," Andrew sneered, his tone mocking. Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "I'm the man standing by Clara tonight. That's all you need to know." Andrew scoffed, muttering something about Clara always needing someone to save her, but Ethan didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he walked away, leaving Andrew stewing in his arrogance. When Clara returned and saw Ethan waiting for her with a glass of water, her eyes glistened, though she quickly blinked back the tears. He placed the glass in her hand and gave her a gentle squeeze of reassurance. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered, and for the first time in years, Clara felt like she truly wasn't. The night air was cool and fragrant with roses when Clara slipped out into the garden, needing a moment away from the noise of clinking glasses and artificial laughter, and Ethan followed without hesitation, knowing from the tension in her shoulders that she needed someone steady by her side. The garden sparkled with strings of fairy lights, casting a soft glow over the ivy-draped arches and polished stone paths, but for Clara, it felt more like a sanctuary where she could finally breathe. She leaned against the railing, her emerald dress swaying in the breeze, and whispered, "I don't know how I would have made it through this without you." Ethan stood close enough that she could feel his presence like a shield, his voice low and reassuring as he said, "You don't have to thank me. I'm glad to be here." Before she could respond, a familiar voice broke the quiet, and they turned to see Andrew's mother approaching, her hands clasped tightly, her face pale with something between guilt and sorrow. "Clara," she began, her voice trembling, "there's something I should have told you a long time ago." Clara stiffened, caught off guard, while Ethan instinctively moved a little closer, ready to steady her if needed. Andrew's mother hesitated, her eyes glistening with regret, before finally blurting out, "Andrew didn't leave you because he fell in love with someone else. He left because of money. His father pressured him to marry into wealth, and he obeyed. It was never about you not being good enough, it was about him being too weak to choose love over greed." The words hit Clara like a blow to the chest, and her knees almost gave way as years of self-doubt, shame, and hidden heartbreak flooded back in an instant. For so long she had believed she was discarded because she wasn't enough to love, enough to keep, enough to fight for, and hearing the truth both shattered and freed her all at once. Tears welled in her eyes, but before despair could swallow her, Ethan reached out, steadying her with one strong hand on her shoulder, his voice firm yet gentle. "Clara, look at me," he said, his brown eyes holding hers with a quiet intensity. "None of that matters now. What matters is that you are stronger than what he did to you, and you don't need his validation, you never did. He may have chosen money, but you deserve someone who chooses you every single time." Clara's tears spilled freely now, but they weren't just from pain. They were the kind of tears that washed away years of hidden scars. In Ethan's words, she felt something she had long buried, a sense of worth, of dignity, of finally being seen for who she truly was. She leaned into him, allowing herself to rest against the quiet strength he offered, and for the first time since Andrew had left her, she realized that maybe her story wasn't about loss anymore, it was about the chance to start again. In the weeks that followed the wedding, something quiet but undeniable began to grow between Ethan and Clara, a bond that had started as a simple favor but soon wove itself into the fabric of their everyday lives. At first, it was small gestures, Ethan bringing Clara a cup of coffee in the mornings when their paths crossed, Clara surprising Emma with a stack of library books she thought she might enjoy, the three of them sharing casual dinners that stretched into hours of laughter and stories. Yet each moment seemed to carry more weight than the last, as if life itself was gently nudging them closer together. Ethan found himself looking forward to Clara's company in a way he hadn't let himself hope for in years, and Clara, still tender from the wounds of her past, discovered in Ethan a kind of steady comfort she hadn't realized she had been missing. Emma adored her, often tugging Clara into games or bedtime stories, and one evening, while Ethan was cleaning up in the kitchen, he overheard his daughter ask innocently, "Miss Clara, can you be my second mom?" Clara's heart clenched at the question, but instead of deflecting, she hugged the little girl tightly and said, "I'll always be here for you." Later that night, as they sat together on the couch, Clara leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you ever wonder why life has to break us before it gives us something good?" Ethan paused, his arm instinctively wrapping around her, and he smiled faintly. "Maybe because that's the only way we learn to recognize the good when it finally comes," he replied. She turned to him then, her eyes glistening with unspoken emotion, and for a long moment they simply looked at each other, the air between them charged with something neither could deny. "You were supposed to just be my date for one night," Clara said softly, a small laugh escaping through her tears. Ethan's voice was steady but tinged with vulnerability as he asked, "And now?" Clara reached for his hand, her fingers lacing with his. "Now, I think you're exactly where you're meant to be." Emma's giggles drifted in from the floor where she was drawing hearts on a piece of paper, her small voice declaring, "Look, Daddy, it's us." Ethan glanced down to see three stick figures holding hands beneath a bright sun, and in that simple drawing he saw more truth than words could ever express. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe in love again. Not the fleeting kind that abandoned when life grew hard, but the steady, enduring love that came when two broken people chose to heal together. Clara had gone to her ex's wedding expecting to face old pain, but instead, she had found something far more powerful, the unexpected chance to write a new story, one filled with hope, family, and the kind of love that doesn't just mend hearts, but makes them stronger than before.